Hey everyone, it's Chef Andrew Forlines here with chefaf.com. Today we're going to do a deep dive into induction, the history, the science behind it, and how to utilize it best. What I love about induction is a great many things. So induction now, in my mind, has made the old electric tops obsolete. It gives gas a real run for its money, and it works really, really well. Induction's been around for over 100 years. We use it in restaurants, we use it in banquets, and pastry shops use it a lot because it's got that control, that power output. Also needs a lot less ventilation. So let's talk about how it works. Induction is not like the old electric tops that have that red hot coil that gets glowing red hot, turns on and off, so the heat fluctuates. When you have induction, you've got a consistent power coming out. It's also going to be using an electric magnetic field created by copper coils underneath pulsing on and off to interact with the metal itself to get that heat right in your pot or pan. Induction's 95% efficient because it's working directly in the pot or pan. The only heat the glass top gets is from the pot or pan back down, not a lot of spread of heat and not a lot of spillover. So we can keep our house cool in the summer, cook a meal and not heat up the whole house. Induction is 95% efficient. Old electric tops are about 75% efficient. You would have to move the pot or pan to stop the cooking, and that glowing heat was going to go into your home. Gas is only 35 to 40% efficient when it comes to converting the actual gas you're burning into heat. A lot of the heat is going right around the pan before the metal has time to absorb it. Here in Denver, Colorado, and even our mountain towns, the elevation really impacts gas ability to heat. The higher we get, the less oxygen there is in the air, so the gas burns at a lower efficiency. So you lose even more power output and efficiency. The other thing is the most amount of BTU, which is how we gauge how much heat we're using when we're burning gas, is much, much lower in the residential industry than it is in commercial. A lot of people think gas is the way to go, and it's heavy duty, it's powerful, chefs like it. And I'm gonna say chefs love commercial gas. In a commercial setting, we're able to have a large hood with ventilation and a fire suppression system, which is pretty much just fire extinguishers built in right over your cook surface, ready to ruin your day anytime that it gets too hot. But in the residential space, because we have bedrooms and we're in a house and we don't want to get the cabinets too hot, our restrictions are much lower on how much BTU we can put out. So that our BTU is going to be, let's say, most of your burners are 15 to 20,000 BTU range. I've seen the highest in the residential space be 25,000 BTUs. Induction, even your mid-grade and above induction burners are 35,000 BTU equivalent. So you're about 150% the power you can have for gas you can have with induction. So that's going to mean we're going to get to a boil much quicker. We're going to be able to sear foods really well. We're going to be able to sear foods really well. We're going to be able to get a lot of heat there. I even find that if I crowd a pan and say my onions are sweating out and not getting any browning, I can turn it up to a higher power than I could with gas to evaporate that moisture out and get back to a true saute, and then I can turn the temperature down. So there's a little learning curve. I tell people go 3/4 heat to start with your high on your induction, so that you're not burning everything. Things heat up really quickly, they preheat really quickly, so you're gonna not wanna chop vegetables as you go. You're gonna have everything cut and ready to go as you're cooking, almost like wok style cooking. You're gonna put it in and it's gonna cook really quickly for you. Now, induction also has more controllability than gas or electric. The lows are lower and the highs are higher than any other cooktop. So we're able to get that big pot of water boiling really quick. We're also able to go really low and get this chocolate to melt very gently and not scorch at the lowest setting, and I don't need a double boiler. So you'll see we've got this gently melted. It's even got some of its chocolate chip shape, and you got a nice shine on there. So it's really, really gentle on the low. It's also consistent on its energy output. So if I have it set at something, it's not turning on and off. If it's a 3 or a 4, a low, a medium, it's going to be that consistent heat output. So once I get a simmer on there, it's going to stay right where I want it. So as you learn how to utilize it, it's going to really perform well for you, and it's really going to be consistent. It's very responsive as well. So the old electric tops, would turn it off, but it would still be glowing red hot. You'd have to move the pot or pan to stop the cooking. With induction, it's going to be very responsive, so it shuts off immediately. Once that power output stops or adjusts, it's instantaneous, and so you can control very, very well. Now it is a glass top. This is high tempered glass, so it is scratch resistant. But what I like to do, and because it's a magnetic field, we can jump right through a silicone mat or a towel, anything like that, which means we can protect the glass and also make this a slip resistant area. So we can boil through it, sear through it, anything like that. If I have a rough bottom cast iron pan, I'm definitely going to want to put a mat down, something down to protect the glass, because cast iron can scratch. I'm also not going to be shaking my pots and pans directly on the glass. I'm going to pick them up if I'm going to shake or toss my food, okay? This specific induction top cooktop we're working on here is the Gaggenau. They're affiliated with Thermador and Bosch, so there is some functionality in those brands that are similar. What is unique with this is that it's got lots of little burners underneath that activate wherever it detects the pan. So you'll see it's going to follow my pot or pan as I move it around, and then that way we can move our pots and pans and use them anywhere. It's also adaptive, so that I could put a large saute griddle, a big pot, anything like that, and it's going to adapt and activate accordingly underneath. So now I have one giant griddle here, so it's not going to have any cold spots in between. But when it comes to induction, all the power and safety features are across brands. It comes down to the interface and the interaction that you're going to have with it and some of the aesthetics. So that's what you should focus on when picking out your induction. Some of the other benefits are safety. So if there isn't a pot or pan, I can't turn the induction on because it has nothing to interact with. So you can't accidentally turn on your stove. It cools off very quickly, and it's going to have less heat on the surface than any other cooktop. So it's not going to, burn anyone. It may be hot to the touch, but it's not going to send anyone to the hospital. Even when it's really hot and you turn it off, dissipates very quickly. It also extends your countertop, by which I mean if you have a small space and it's turned off and there's no metal on it for it to interact with, it's just a glass top, so I can come in and I can put groceries on there. I could put a cutting board on one side and be cooking on the other. So it really does enable you to utilize that space more diversely than, say, a gas or electric top, where we might want to be careful. So let's talk a little bit about safety for your induction. Induction cooktops are going to be much safer than gas or electric. You can't accidentally turn on an induction top without a pot or pan being there to activate with. So the magnetic field is going to see if there's metal there. If there isn't, it just won't turn on because it has nothing to interact with. It also has a shut-off feature. So if, say, an emergency pulls you away and you left something cooking on the stove, if it gets too hot, say all the moisture evaporates out, it's going to get too hot and sense that, and then it'll automatically shut off so that you don't have to worry about being left on or forgetting to shut it off, because it will automatically shut off. We don't want that happening, but it's there as a nice safety feature. Ventilation needs are much lower when we cook with induction. Most of your ventilation requirements have to do with how much gas you're burning in the house. That's going to be emitting carbon monoxide that we want out of the house, right? So the more BTUs, the more gas we're burning, the bigger the ventilation has to be. The bigger the ventilation, a lot of, depending where you are and what your building codes are, you're going to have to bring air in somewhere once you're putting out so much air out of the house with ventilation, which is a whole other HVAC project, which is another hole in the house. That air is going to come in, you're going to need to heat it and treat it and filter it and get it ready for the house. So your gas range can become a much bigger project when you factor in the ventilation and the makeup air. With induction, our ventilation needs are much lower because we're not creating a lot of gas or smells. You're still going to want some ventilation with the idea of capturing smoke or any particulates from the cooking itself, but those requirements are going to be much, much lower. Ventilation is also friendlier with downdrafts. So if you don't want a big hanging over your head ventilation hood, we can do an inset counter or a pop-up telescopic or we can do a telescopic recirculating or even external ventilation that way as well. But induction, really, really much friendlier with that. So in conclusion, what I always recommend to people is do induction indoors for its performance, for its higher heat output, efficiency, and cleanability, and do gas outside. So there's a great many solutions for cooking outdoors. A lot of people are building kitchens outside, or they're doing high-powered grills. We do infrared heat now is available and gas-driven, so we can replicate that charcoal grilling with gas. There's also high-powered burners. So there are outdoor burners that you can have fed with a built-in gas line or even just propane tanks. And those burners, you know, we have one here that is 65,000 BTU. So again, you're getting back up into that high BTU range, that commercial BTU range for wok cooking, say crab boils, paellas, even beer brewing, you know, that big pot of wort you got to get up to a high temperature. So I'm a big fan of induction indoors for all the reasons we talked about, and then gas outdoors. You're not going to need ventilation with gas outside unless you're directly under an overhang. Your BTU restriction isn't going to be as great. So we've got some great options for that. We've got a lot of functionality there. So that's the overview of induction. Let's move on to something else. So that's our overview of induction. Thanks for listening. If you've got more questions, you can always reach out to me. I'm very accessible, chefaf.com. I'm Chef Andrew Forlines, your appliance technology specialist.